Okay, so I asked ChatGPT who you were.
Oh.
And this is what the artificial intelligence said.
Oh, I'm afraid.
There we go. You can tell me how accurate or not accurate this is. So it gave me a little bio and everything. It says, Carrie DeYoung has been a pivotal figure in the American Kennel Club, AKC, agility community. She began her journey with purebred dogs as a 4-H member, exhibiting various breeds as a junior handler. Over the past 2 decades, she has trained and competed in agility, conformation, obedience, and herding, notably finishing conformation championships on her Belgian Tervuurens. In 2010, after 11 years in the AKC Agility Department, she was promoted to Director of Agility. In this role, she has enhanced the AKC's agility program and developed new initiatives, including managing the AKC Agility Invitational and the National Agility Championship. Carrie has also served as co-chairman of these events and has been an AKC Agility and Junior Showmanship judge. Her extensive experience and leadership have significantly contributed to the growth and development of agility within the AKC.
Yay!
So how close was it? How close?
Well, sounds to me like our talk is over.
I was gonna say, that is like, I feel like that needs to be like in the podcast. That is crazy how I think it seems accurate.
It is surprisingly accurate.
Was there anything that was inaccurate? Because sometimes it'll get a lot of things right, and then it'll make very blatant errors, like you never did confirmation and herding or something like that.
Right.
So I had no
it has
idea.
all of that right.
Wow.
I think the only thing that it kind of has wrong would be over whatever number of years I was competing in agility. Because I haven't competed in quite a while in agility, though it doesn't do that. So I go to my lessons every week faithfully. You can ask my instructor. Well, unless I'm out of town. But no, it is surprisingly accurate. I was a junior showmanship judge for quite until I was hired by AKC. Back in those days, I had to give up my license for it. Who knows? Might decide to go back to doing that someday. Really, always like the juniors. So no, it was pretty accurate. I like the fact that I was pivotal.
It apparently had a high opinion of you.
And you know what? I'm liking ChatGPT better and better.
That's right. I know.
Yeah.
Welcome to Bad Dog Agility, a podcast helping you reach all of your dog agility goals. Whether it's competing under the bright lights of the televised finals at Westminster or successfully navigating a homemade course in your own backyard, we'll bring you training tips, interviews, and news about the great sport of dog agility. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
I'm ready. I'm ready. The show starts with your hosts, Jennifer, Esteban, and Sarah.
I'm Jennifer.
I'm Esteban.
And I'm Sarah, and this is episode 352. Today's podcast is brought to you by St. Rocco's Treats.
It's Grace from Hounds of Hack. It's Amber from American Canine Country.
It's Cynthia from CH Dog Agility.
It's Lindsay from Y2 Canines. And we love using St. Rocco's Treats as our high-value reward.
And you will too. Visit us at strocco'streats.shop and use the code BD30 for 30% off your first order. Enjoy the attention-grabbing flavor and easy-to-break texture that Grace, Amber, Cynthia, Lindsay, and so many others love about St. Rocco's Treats. Again, use the code BD30 for 30% off. Thank you.
And you can find a link to St. Rocco's Treats on the show notes page. Today, I am very excited to be joined by the former Director of Agility for the AKC, Carrie DeYoung. I'm also very sad to think that this might be our last interview with Carrie as she retires from this position. We'll have to see what she does in the future and if we can find a reason to bring her back on. But Carrie, welcome once again onto the podcast.
Well, thank you. Thanks for inviting me. And who knows, I could pop in sometime again. You never know.
That's right. So when Carrie announced her retirement a couple of months ago, I knew that I wanted to bring her on the podcast and talk because the time period that you have been the director of AKC Agility has seen so many things happen in the world of agility and so much growth and change in the sport and especially in AKC. And I really wanted to get your perspective on everything that's happened in this sport, but kind of from your point of view. But before we dive into all of that, let's get kind of a little bit of background about you as it pertains to the AKC and to dogs in general. Like, what is your background with dogs in agility and with the AKC?
Yeah, we never talk about Carrie when Carrie's on the podcast.
Yeah, we're always talking about something.
Some pressing issue or event It needs to be discussed.
Right.
Well, I don't know. We may want to just go back to that Chat GBT description you got. It was pretty good. I started as a junior actually, and I was showing in junior handling with my dogs, but I was also competing in obedience some at the time because there was no agility. And then I got a Belgian Tavern when I got out of college from a dear friend of mine. And I started training her, and she was a delight to train. And along the way came agility. And I thought, oh, she's smart. We can do this. And so our very first agility class was in a parking lot at a community college. Yes, we were jumping 30-inch jumps on asphalt. Things have changed a lot. And then I got a puppy, another turf puppy. And he was very, very awkward boy. And I really wanted to get an obedience championship. But he was so awkward. I thought, you know what, that agility equipment stuff, I think could be really helpful for his body awareness. Let's go do some more agility. I hadn't competed with my other dog yet. It was only the first year or two of USDA at that point, because that's what existed in the US. And that's where we started. And I started with my boy in agility, and we never got that Otch, but we certainly got a variety of agility titles along the way and one CD. So that was how I kind of came into the agility world. And then when AKC Agility started, there was one of the very first judges seminars was held in the Los Angeles area. And I got a call from Karen Moreau. And Karen says, hey, we've got some extra spots. Will you come fill a seat? And I was about 7 months pregnant at the time. And I'm like, I don't want to sit in a chair for a whole weekend. No. And Karen says, come on, I really need to fill these seats. I told him I could do it. I'm like, all right, I'll come to the seminar. And so I passed and was tossed out into the ring. We didn't have the number of reps we have now. There was one rep at the time besides Sharon Anderson, the director. We had a couple of local judges that would help us out, and off we went. So that was, kind of how I got started with AKC Agility. So very, very early on, I was at the first AKC show in Southern California. So I'm sounding pretty old now that I'm thinking about this. And then one day I got a call from Sharon Anderson. I was working at Disney at the time. And she said, hey, wouldn't you like to be a rep? And I said, no, I don't think so, but thanks for calling. And, but then she explained the job more to me. And oddly enough, it worked for me. I had young kids at the time, and I was going to get to work from home. I had already decided I was leaving my job at Disney because I wanted to work from home, or not work from home. I wanted to be home with my kids so I could do more stuff with them. And this weird job where I was only supposed to travel 2 times a month seemed like it would work. Mm-hmm. And it did. For me, primarily, it worked really well because the school was 4 doors away. And, I spent a lot of time down at the school and could, finish up my work at night when the kids were sleeping. Was that more needed?
That's so wild.
I want to go back to the part where you worked at Disney. I had no idea you worked at Disney. That's where you got me.
Yeah, I worked at Disney for over 10 years, all in human resources. Both in my primary department I worked in was relocations. So it was moving people all around the world when they were hired or being transferred to another division. And it was in the, late 80s, early 90s, which was a very exciting time for the Disney company. They were building Paris. They were working on Tokyo. There was all this stuff going on.
I remember now.
It was very, very great. It was just a great time to be there. That was when they started the cruise line and when they bought the Ducks hockey team. And there was just always something crazy going on.
The Mighty Ducks. That's wild.
It was great. I got to, meet people in all those divisions, work with people around the world. So it was really, really a fun job from that standpoint. And then the other job I had was I was at Walt Disney Imagineering and recruited the college interns that would come in for the co-op program that would come in for 6 months. And so I got to fly to the universities and, interview the kids, meet the professors, see their programs. It was very fascinating.
Wow, that's crazy. It's so interesting to hear about people's lives outside of dogs.
Right.
Kind of forget they have them.
Well, do you feel like a lot of your experiences with Disney translated to what you were doing in the AKC? I would think it would.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the biggest things I learned at Disney in the relocation department, if you look at the list of stresses in someone's life, one of the top 3 is a relocation.
Mm-hmm.
And so understanding that something that may sound small to me when someone first says it to me is extremely important to that individual. Extremely important for whatever other outside sources I'm not aware of. The fact that this person is having a breakdown over the fact that they only have one set of pillowcases in their corporate housing, there's a reason for this, and it's not the pillowcases.
Mm-hmm.
So understanding that when you can help with those pieces, it's important to the person. They understand you care, and then you can delve into what they really need in many cases. And I find that in agility all the time when I'm talking with people. When someone comes over and, depending on what they're upset about, sometimes that's really not what they're upset about. And spending that time to kind of, respond to them and dig down into what it is. And I think that's really important.
I think that's such an interesting perspective because I think sometimes people can think of the position of director of AKC Agility as near dictatorial, but in my mind, I think that ultimately is the person, Carrie DeYoung, who's going to hear all the complaints from the competitors one way or another, either directly from the competitors themselves or up some kind of chain.
Right.
I can think of the many complaints that I personally brought to you, probably, just like me, So it's interesting. I really had no idea about your human resources background, and that must have served you so well, when I think about resilience and the ability to get up the next day. Because I'll tell you, 2 of the 3 of us podcasters here could not have done what you did because and we're both nodding our heads. That's me and Jen. Like it's not. We do not have the kind of personality where we belong in human resources. Like that would not go well for us. So I think it's.
I will admit there were days it was tough to get out from under the covers I'd pulled over my head.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I felt like that. Just hearing you say that and your approach there, it kind of suddenly gave me an interesting way to ask one of the questions that I wanted to ask you, which is, I know that so many people feel like that when they do have complaints that, they want to see the change happen right away. And I'm always telling people, like, it's not going to happen overnight, especially with a large organization. But I personally believe that the AKC is always working for the betterment of the dogs and the handlers and the sport. And is, in my opinion, has always been very, very receptive. Are they fast? Maybe not. Are they receptive? I would say yes. And so I think that for those people that maybe feel that way, feel like maybe they haven't seen the change that they want to see, I think maybe looking back over your tenure, because it is long, because there are so many years, and when you look at that kind of scope of time, I think you will see that the AKC has done a lot of things for the competitor and in response to the competitor. So maybe let's take a step back and talk for a few minutes about kind of, I guess, some of the big milestones from your point of view in agility, and especially within AKC Agility, and, whatever little tidbits that you of like behind the scenes that you have on these initiatives and things that have happened, feel free to sprinkle those in.
I was afraid you were going to ask some question like that.
Well, I can help you too. We can help you. We've all been here the whole time.
One of the things to understand, and we've actually talked about this before when we've talked about like the advisory committee, is the process it takes for us to be able to make a regulation change.
Right.
And with the AKC, to make a regulation change, once the department decides that, yes, the director and, working with the reps have decided, yes, is what we want to do, most of the time we have to take it through the board of directors. And that process, just to get it into the board's hands, can sometimes just be 3 to 4 months there, because first we have to write the memo. And I know at first that doesn't sound, too onerous, but depending on what else you've got going on and the depth of what you're working on, this can take a while to get this memo done. So you get it done. We need to talk with the Companion Events Committee, and that is a delegate committee that only meets 4 times a year. They want to know what is going forward to the board before it goes forward. Then we take it to the board. The board reads it 1 month, and then they vote on it. If everything has gone smoothly, they voted on it the next time they meet as a board. But remember, there's already now 4 months out of the year where it's a delegates only meeting and the board is not voting on anything. So it's actually only 8 months where we can, get something approved and move it through the process. So if we get something moved through the board in a 6-month period, we're very excited about that. But along the way, it's sometimes it's a tedious process, but at the same time, we have found that we've been saved once or twice in this process, because you think that you've taken the right path on something. And sometimes when you're doing it within your own department, in your head, you've gone one route and this is what we're going to do. And you get somebody else that asks a question who is outside the sport more, that says, what about X? And then you realize there's a gap here. There's something else we still need to do with it. And that has certainly saved us a couple times from putting out particularly a regulation change that was not going to work the way we thought it would.
Right.
I don't suppose you could throw out one of the spicy regulation changes that you may be referring to.
That didn't make it.
No, we're not going to go there. I will tell you, as you are all aware, the one time that we really pushed our opportunity to jump on something and make a change immediately, which was very unusual for the American Kennel Club, as you all know, of course, goes back to the removal of the chute as an obstacle.
Yeah.
And I think that was pivotal for all of agility, not just for AKC agility, because once we made that decision, I mean, we did a podcast on it. In less than a week, pretty much everyone around the world had pulled it.
Yeah. Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah.
I was just looking back.
Very unique situation.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was just looking back because you started as director in 2010, right?
Correct.
And so I was just looking back at some of the stat stuff that we did to remind myself. But, just for those who may not realize all the things that have changed since then, like the first year, I believe this is right, the first year for Time to Beat and Fast was 2011. So that was within your time frame. The addition of Premier was within your time frame. The addition of the ISC that we've had a podcast with you about, and kind of where it's going in current times, and the way that that's changing is within your time. I believe, let's see, the very first Invitational was 2012, which was, you were the director. So you've overseen, I mean, of course, it also overlaps with the majority of the 3 of our careers in agility. But from my perspective, you've overseen like every major change that has happened within AKC agility, right? So really kind of just taking a moment and thinking, okay, when you started, there was no Invitational, and the only
I'm going to correct that one. Actually, there was. The Invitational, I think, was on, I think it started in 2009. Okay.
Records. You're right. I went to the previous page and it only went back.
You can never trust the AKC website for big events.
No, I was the chairperson starting with the first one.
Oh, okay.
But that was a concept that was actually developed by Sharon Anderson and Dan Dagey.
Oh, okay. Wonderful. But it's like, if you think back and think, okay, when you took over, AKC agility was jumpers with weaves and standard, and that's it.
What about mixed breed dogs?
That also came on board before me. That was one of Sharon Anderson's last things that she was able to get through the board, and finally get the approval on that agility had been asking for from day one.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
As soon as AKC agility started, Sharon was already requesting that mixed breeds be allowed, and it took until, I'd have to go back and find the date, probably 2008. something like that, for them to be approved.
Well,
But that
I
was,
think
again, a huge moment.
yeah,
And then we were
absolutely.
able to continue to encourage the growth, of course, add the mixed breeds into the Invitational. And then certainly now we have all these other opportunities too, where there are international teams that the mixed breeds can be on. And, you know, in our sport, we just don't even think about it. I mean, dogs are dogs. They're running, jumping, climbing. It's what we do.
Right.
Right. And I think this is a great segue into talking just briefly about the AKC, the American Kennel Club, as an organization for our international audience and for people who probably have never competed in the AKC. They don't just do agility, right? So AKC, in my opinion, at least historically, was first and foremost just a registry, right?
Correct.
Of dogs, purebred dogs, all the different breeds. And they offer many, many different sports, right?
Well, it originally started with a group of people with sporting breeds that wanted to prove who had the best dog out in the field, and and very quickly it turned to the dogs in the breed ring as far as looking at them like they would have livestock. But it really started as a bunch of guys that wanted to say, "I have the best field dog." If you want to just break it down to, to that. But then, yes, it was a registry and then moved, into the conformation world and the hunt test world.
That's right. And so now includes events like obedience and
nose work.
Yeah. Lots of different activities.
Right.
Lots of stuff for retrievers, hunt tests, the big field competitions as well. And so let me ask you, because again, for people who don't know, conformation, I feel like has been the backbone, both in terms of money brought in and political strength within the organization. If you think about the AKC like an entity or a nation or an organization, right? And who kind of runs that organization, I would say conformation, right? Very powerful, influential.
Right. Very strong.
When you look at a lot of the board members, right? They're going to have been active in conformation. What kind of impact during your time there did agility make on the American Kennel Club? How is the AKC different today, in your opinion, because of the sport of agility and what it did?
I think the biggest thing agility did was it brought more people into the dog world. Into the AKC world that wouldn't have known anything about it otherwise. When we think back and we look at the very beginnings of agility, and again, I know we've talked about this on podcasts before, people would see it on TV and they wanted to try it with their dog. They had no idea what the American Kennel Club was. They had no idea a purebred dog. I mean, they knew about purebred dogs if they had papers for their dogs. But they had their dog at home they wanted to do something with. Maybe they had a purebred dog that they had registered with the American Kennel Club because someone told them to send in the papers and send in the money. But, they didn't have that relationship with the organization. And I think agility was the sport that really started to really open those doors to people that had no background in the dog world before. Obedience is a wonderful, challenging sport, but that one's certainly not for everybody either. You watch it and you're impressed by the amazing precision. But, if your dog is the one hanging upside down off the back of the couch half the day, you're like, yeah, he's probably not a candidate for this. Whereas that same dog that jumps up on your couch, clears the back of it, dives under the blankets in your bed or whatever, you're like, ooh, I think I might have a sport for him.
Right.
So I think that agility has brought a lot of people into the dog world that wouldn't have been here before. AKC, because of being the registry, people recognize that brand. If they've bought a purebred dog, many times they, had their AKC papers. They just didn't really know what that meant for them.
Now, would it be fair to say that agility had some kind of growth in influence or importance within the AKC as an organization over time during your tenure?
Oh, it's definitely changed as the sport has grown, and you look at, our number of events and our number of entries and our national events that we hold every year, our international teams that travel, our visibility is very high within the within the American Kennel Club. So I think that's a big bonus for our sport, and ultimately a bonus for the American Kennel Club again because of the recognition to the to the AKC.
And do you feel like then there was an attitude shift amongst not any one specific person within the AKC?
You're trying to get me in trouble here.
I'm just wondering. I've always wondered, and now that you're retired, we can ask a little bit.
I will. I think that I do think that's a kind of a fair question, but there definitely has been a change in the understanding of the sport.
Mm-hmm.
And people respecting it as a sport. When we first started, we all heard it. Oh, look, the circus dogs are over there in that ring over there. I mean, literally, the circus dogs are over there. And that was not just John Q. Public saying that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now, I think agility has certainly changed and grown and has the maturity as a sport where it gets a lot of respect within the organization as a sport.
Right. I think that's really, really true. And I think from very early on, at least on this podcast, I felt like it was a point of emphasis for us that, it is a sport, and the dogs at least are athletes. But I would contend that every handler, no matter whether they view themselves as an athlete or not, I think they are athletes. It's an athletic team sport, team event. Okay, so this now leads me a little bit to my next question. We're going to use Westminster as the segue, but really we're going to talk about just all these events that are televised.
Mm-hmm.
And I think amongst all the organizations, and here I'm thinking more North America, but I wonder if it can be applied to the entirety of the agility world, that it was televised events. Maybe early on, like back in the day, it was Animal Planet,
yep.
Right? Early. Then I feel like there was a little bit of an absence for several years. And now, of course, we've arrived in the streaming era, the Netflix, Roku, AKC.TV era. And you're really bringing lots of events now to the masses. And the AKC has a disproportionate share of those events that are being broadcast. So tell us a little bit about maybe what drove that, what impact you think it is having now, and is there a goal here? Is there a future? Is there a plan? Is there a big picture here that we don't know about?
Well, I'd have to send you to AKC TV for the big picture.
Mm-hmm.
But AKC TV was an initiative developed internally that I will tell you out in the sports we really weren't aware of until they were ready to roll it out. But there was a feeling internally that, again, we have all this great information. The AKC does. We've got all these wonderful events. We've got people looking for dogs. How can we share what we have in a way that was relevant? Sure, we've got a website, but like every website, it's not perfect. A lot of people are not particularly internet savvy, don't want to do deep dives, in their computer trying to find information. However, something streaming, a lot of people can access very easily. So it made programming to share all the resources the AKC had, a great positive. And that's what it initially started with. But very quickly, they knew they wanted to start to include events that were going on. Like anything else, it gives you a lot more control over your message if you're the one putting your message out there. So that's a win, I think, for all of the events that are televised. And then along the way, AKC was able to secure an agreement with ESPN. Mm-hmm. And that certainly has driven even more content, and certainly the content that is accessible, to those that, again, maybe don't know anything about the AKC. They're not going to dig through the internet looking for it, or for all the sports that are highlighted. As you said, Animal Planet early on was one that was televising the national championship for 1 or 2 years, and then that moved to the Invitational for a couple of years before that contract ended. And then there was that gap period in there. And then once AKC TV came in, and especially the ESPN contract, that's made a huge difference.
Mm-hmm. Well, what do you see as the future of dog agility, or maybe all of canine activities, as far as being televised and streamed and that sort of thing? Do you have any predictions or a sense of where we're going here?
I don't. It's one of those things that, at least from our end, from our department side, it tends to be a couple of things have been driven very specifically by AKC TV. One of them is the Premier Cup. The first time we held the Premier Cup, it was to be tied to a large horse event in New York. And I believe Jen was at that one. Mm-hmm. And it was originally going to be like a one-off concept, or maybe if something continued with that sponsor tied to the large horse event, this event would move forward with them. Then AKC TV, after that first time, said, "Oh, wait a minute. This concept would work well for us. Can we keep producing this? Can we move forward with this on a regular basis?" And, and that's how the Premier Cup came to be. We needed something to tie to an initial sponsor, and it worked out well. Every once in a while, we have spent some time talking about maybe different events that we could, come up with from an agility side that might work well for televising. And I wouldn't be surprised at some point if there is, a couple, or at least one new event that'll come along, but that's probably a year or two out at least. So we'll see. I still think it's a fabulous outreach. Mm-hmm. You've done the numbers after Westminster, and you see what the spike is as far as interest in the sport. And, we see the same things, obviously, after our events are on ESPN. So it just is another great way to, get it out into the public. In the old days, let's talk about old. Remember the old days when we would go to agility trials out in a park or in a very public venue? People could actually kind of wander into an agility trial. In today's world, so many of our events are held in private facilities, which are wonderful for the exhibitors. But no one stumbles through the door into an agility trial accidentally. And that's where I think things like our events being televised, whether it's AKC TV or it's ESPN or it's a combo, are huge for getting the information out there on the sport. Because people don't just run into it anymore.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that is such a good point. Just an aside, I love the energy of crowds. And so I remember the early Westminster competitions, for example, or even the AKC Invitational. I just love having all the people there. Okay, so again, I think we're a little bit on the human resources side of this. If I think of the AKC as just a huge umbrella of an organization, there's so many things that fall under it. And even agility, it's not just agility, but it's a lot of different agility competitors. I believe that more than any other organization in the world, the AKC maintains the most diverse dogs by breed, and maybe even speed, but certainly by breed, and competitor. And when I say competitor, I mean by age, gender, athletic ability, running style, training style. It is it's a huge, diverse group of handlers and dogs. Again, more than any other organization. And of course, Carrie's about to explain to us exactly why that can be very problematic, right? To keep all of these people under the same umbrella, because something that's good for one dog sometimes is necessarily a little bit less good for a different dog. So what are some of the big challenges in your mind, like more broadly, although I guess specific things are good too, examples of where you've kind of struggled or had to focus on keeping everyone under the umbrella, and how does that impact your decision making, both as an organization and as you, the director, and maybe the director as the intermediary between many different factions and a bureaucracy that is the AKC behind you? That was kind of a long question there.
Well, you kind of threw everything in there.
I did.
Well, one of the things that, we always have to remember, and of course, people like to point it out anytime we have to charge a fee for something, ultimately the AKC is a business. And so like any business, we need to be aware of who our current customer is, who's not our current customer. Is there a way to get the, other people to be interested in what we're doing? And certainly, again, is there a way to make sure that we're not losing the people that, have been loyal to our product for a long time? If you want to think about it, in that type of a standpoint, it is a product. It is a business. Otherwise, I would love to say we could all do this for free. But, all those computer systems that don't always work quite as well as we want, like every other computer system in the world, couldn't exist if there weren't some, fees being brought in. And certainly I wouldn't have had my job without everybody. So first of all, thank you to every agility competitor out there. I appreciate my last 25 years that you've helped me have. But we need to understand who our core customer is. And our core customer is someone who enjoys competing with their dogs 2 to 3 times a month, or most people, the average person has 2 dogs that they're competing with at various levels. And they like to compete close to home. They also now like more artificial surfaces. And of course, she tends to have some sort of a knee or hip problem. Did I just say that out loud? I'll let you guys decide how to deal with that one. But so our core customer is looking for, and let me go back to truly the number one, there's 2 things that drive our core customer. And I think it drives anybody that's doing any sports with their dog. But one is the time with their dog. They really enjoy the training. They enjoy going out and doing stuff with their dog. They also enjoy the camaraderie when they're out at the events. For many, many people, the dog world, agility, in this case that we're talking about, that is their social life. That is their family. Those are the people that they spend their time with, not just at the events. They're going to their birthday parties. They're going to other milestones in that person's life. They help each other as, they just all jump in and help. And that is, what we always have to look at too, is it is a lifestyle for people. So when you start to take all that into consideration, you have to realize that, as you're saying, we've got a variety of dogs, from dogs like, Jen's cute Frenchie.
Gotta love the Frenchie.
Absolutely. All the way through, those amazing border collies and Malinois and everything else we've got out there that just, go out there and just tear up these courses in the best of ways, and trying to find that balance. Also trying to find the balance for the younger exhibitors coming in, whether they're a true junior or they're someone who's just out of college. And they are looking at the sport, especially the ones more, closer to coming out of college or at that age of their lives. They're looking at this as more of a sport. And so they want to really delve into the sport aspect. So you can see that we've got, as you, alluded to already, we've got people all over the board. So it's trying to understand who's our core group, what do they need, but who are the other people that we want to encourage to come to our sport. And one of the ways to do that, obviously, is watch what your competitors are doing. We know our base, our base exhibitor. We know what they're looking for. But we also want to be able to encourage other people to come, try AKC. Let us give you, something to do. We're a large organization and we can come up with something. And that was the growth of the ISC program, which we've talked about before. The International Sweepstakes class has existed way before I was ever director. It first came in when the first team started to compete with FCI. I don't remember, what are we at, like 30 years on that one, some crazy number. So that people could run an international style course. Well, then it just kind of laid fallow for many, many years. It would, people would go to one or two during the year if they wanted to try out for the world team. But that was really it. But then we found that people liked the international sports because we were seeing it happening in other organizations. And at that time, FCI started to even push and grow more of their international sports. So, of course, they added the European Open, which then opened it up to mixed breeds. Who has mixed breeds? Pick us. AKC has those. Mm-hmm. And then certainly the junior program. We've got juniors. We'd love to have a lot more juniors. There's all sorts of constraints for families and kids with trying to get into agility as a junior. And then this last year, we have a senior team. Thank you, FCI. They're like, I don't know if this senior thing's really going to work out, but we'll give it a try. And the USA AKC jumps in with, all feet and everything. We're like, we got them. We got seniors. And, we were one of the countries that sent a full team the very first year. We filled every single spot. Didn't even have to try hard. Why? Because our core group is in that upper age range. And they're fabulous, absolutely fabulous. We had a couple of people come to us after our warm-ups and really, truly said this. Are those really your seniors?
Right. I need some birth certificates. This is like the Little League World Series.
Yes. They originally told us we'd have to provide birth certificates this year or passport. I think that's going to wait another year before they've officially signed off on this as a permanent event, but we will have to supply them in the future.
Wow.
So I've kind of gone in a roundabout manner here, but, we've got so many people that love the sport and trying to do what we can to, help them, want to stay in the sport, want to bring their next dog into the sport. It's always a bit of a challenge. Some people want things faster. Some people don't want things ever to change. Some people want to get rid of certain equipment. Some people want to add equipment. I mean, just, and trying to look at those perspectives and decide what works for the sport as a whole. And again, looking at, we're, consumer based. We need to look at what the other organizations are doing too.
Well, I hope people are getting a sense of the amount of work that Carrie has had to put in over the length of her career and all the different things that have come about directly a lot of times from her efforts. And you are almost done with this podcast. We're almost going to let you go away into retirement. But first, not everyone gets to retire feeling like they have seen everything they want to get done be done, right? So are you in that situation where you've done everything, or do you have some things on the burner, but it's going to be someone else? You had to hand that off to someone else, and someone else is going to have to see it through. What kind of things are upcoming for, in your opinion, the sport or AKC? What's going on?
Well, I'll tell you my own personal goal that I never got to, which really kills me, is we talked about juniors. I never got a true juniors program and a more enhanced junior event put in place. That is something I will still be pushing from behind and, helping to move that concept along, because I do feel it's extremely important. We've talked about before, and ChatGPT got it too. I was a 4-H member. I grew up in, and that's where I started in the dog world, was in 4-H. And so I know that, as a child, how important that was to me. And I look at our juniors that are out there, and of course, it's been fun watching Ethan come along from, the day he was born.
Right.
But then there are the kids that want to come into the sport that aren't coming through a dog family. And that's something that, you always have to try to work through. How do we get them be part of it? What can we do that makes this as exciting as travel baseball? So, that's something that I know we'll get there. Unfortunately, I won't be the one to finish that one off. The other thing that's been very exciting, of course, we've already talked about the past few years, has been the growth of the international program. and we've made a lot of changes. In fact, we've got a memo coming up with some other tweaks and adjustments, because with anything new, you're going to have to keep, adjusting it. The nice thing about agility, and certainly one of the things that kept me around for so long, is, being in the agility department is just like going out and running your dog all the time. You never see the same course twice. Same thing happens. I open my computer in the morning as director, and I'd look at it and go, wow, that's interesting. Mm-hmm. So that was certainly a plus. But, the biggest thing for me personally was not getting more of a junior program done. But there's other stuff that they're going to be working on that I'm excited to watch the department do.
Right, because I think that's an issue also tied to this idea of growth. Like, where do you get the next generation of competitors? Absolutely. As, some of us here age out. I remember being in our 20s, our young 20s when we started, and we are certainly not in our 20s anymore. And so I do wonder sometimes where that next generation is going to come from.
All right. So as you were asking that last question and asking her if she had, accomplished the majority of things that she wanted to, she was nodding. Yes, she has done, except for the juniors. She feels so good about what she's accomplished. So is that part of what goes into this, moment of retirement? Did you kind of get to the point where you're like, all right, we got Westminster, we got ISC, we've got Agility League, like, I can leave this in good hands? Like, what is the timing for your retirement?
There's just, there's never a perfect time, I don't think, for anyone to retire. There's so many things that go into it. My 25 years with AKC was in July, which was kind of a nice little check mark. Yay, 25. I hate to leave anything at an odd number. 24 seemed weird. So, right. But I do have another grandchild on the way who's going to be born in just a couple of months, or, oh my goch, a couple of weeks. We're up to a couple of weeks now.
Time just flies.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I'm so excited. Unfortunately, they live about 6 hours from us. So it's not as easy for me to just pop back and forth. So I just want to be more involved with the family again. I'm ready to go back and do that. My husband keeps saying, what are you going to do? You're going to be bored. You're going to be bored. I keep saying, you just wait.
That was going to be my next question, was what is in your future, I guess, on the dog side of things?
I'm hoping to teach my dog to come when called. Maybe if we can accomplish that, someone might actually see us at an agility trial. But nice. Until he has a better recall, that won't be happening. But I got to tell you, he's got an awesome running A-frame, in case anyone's wondering.
That's
but no,
amazing.
I don't have any real specific plans, which again worries my husband to no end. Mm-hmm. Probably because he's concerned I'm going to show up at his office and start touching things.
That's right. He's accustomed to a certain lifestyle, and that's about to change.
Yes, I'm home a lot more, and already he's quite distressed over that. My dog, though, is very happy. So we'll see. I have some ideas of things I might want to do. It'll give me a chance to do some volunteer work that I haven't had time to do. Because a lot of times, with the different organizations, if you want to volunteer, they'd like you to be able to do some things kind of on a schedule or whatever. And my prior lifestyle as director didn't allow for that. So I'm sure I'll still be doing something in the dog world, and hoping to do some volunteer stuff besides hanging out with the grandkids and trying to stay out of trouble.
So as we wrap up, I just want to add, not really a question, but more of like when Sarah and Esteban came to me to ask to do a podcast with you, I was like, yes, we got to do a retirement podcast with Carrie, because it's like our retirement party for you.
You know what? That's just been the best part of my job. I mean, really, truly has been, as I said, I think when we first started, was getting to know so many, great people. It's just so funny when my family and friends just kind of laugh when I'm like, oh, I was talking to so-and-so in Ohio, or I was, calling this person from North Carolina, or I'd be in town somewhere and I'd, look up someone that I've, met over the years doing agility. And we talked about it. It's the community. Yeah. That's what makes our sport special, is the community. So
It's so,
I'm gonna miss it.
It's so hard for me to kind of think about the relationship that a lot of the exhibitors have with you. So when I look at like the hundreds of agility exhibitors, they see you standing ringside at AKC Nationals, and maybe they see you on TV at Westminster. And so the relationship with you is very like distant. But I think what's really an honor for me, but also hard for me, is that because of all of the years, like I was doing AKC very heavily before you came in. So I had a great relationship with Sharon Anderson, and all the world team events and all the trips to Europe I've taken with you. So like for you, it's so much more than just seeing you as the agility director. And it's the friendship and the relationship. So it's been great to have you part of it. When we found out you were retiring, we were so sad, and we were talking about all the things that we will miss. And the two things, and they both came up earlier in this podcast, so I just wanted to highlight them, is that I never in all of the years saw you like discredit a question or a problem or a suggestion that somebody had. Like you never just said, nope, not going to happen. Sorry. Like you would always be like, okay, let's see what we can do about that. Will you send me an email after nationals? Or somebody missed a run and you're like, okay, let me walk with you to the gate. Let's see where we can put you in the running order. Like you were just always so like calm and willing to work with people. Or even after an event, you would be like, okay, well, why don't you send me an email and we'll see if we can take a look at that. It was never just like, no, not going to happen. And I think of all the organizations that I've done, I've witnessed that, where people have had questions or concerns and they've just been like, nope, sorry, we're not doing anything about that. So like you personally, but AKC stance on willing to try to work has been great. But the other thing is, and this is the part I think I'm going to miss the most, you're so approachable. I've never been like afraid to come to you with a question or to give you an idea. Like I think of all our fun little chats at all the world team events where we play games and we all just kind of chit chat. And I've never been like, no, you go ask her. No, you go ask her. No, you guys go ask her. We're like, we can just go ask Carrie. Like, can we go for ice cream? And we know she's not going to be mad. Or, hey, have you thought about this? So I think when we were back talking about the Disney stuff and the HR, and I was like, it all makes sense. That's why. Like the part when you were said, that relocation is high for people. And like when you learned that, how it put a different perspective, I'm like, now it makes sense as to why when people make suggestions. I mean, even I've overheard people and I'm like, no, that's a horrible idea. And you're like, okay, let's talk about it. Why don't you send an email? And I'm like, I could not do that job. But as a person who's been in agility for a long time, even before you were agility director, it's been great. It's been an awesome, amazing time. We will very, very, very much miss you. I personally will miss you, but I also think everybody in the agility community. So as you're going away, retirement party, thank you for all of the years of your service.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. It's really been my honor to do this job. And like I said, I've just met so many great people. And you know what? Sometimes even from the weird, bad suggestions, a good idea comes out because you start talking about them and you're like, we can't do that. We can do that. And then all of a sudden you go, oh, wait, what about? And it may not solve what the person originally asked for, but you've just gone off on a new tangent that worked out really well somewhere else. So, that's what I always thought when people would come to me with those things where, you just never knew if you talked about it a little bit where it would go. Some things finally never went anywhere. We could all list those, I'm sure. But it's really been wonderful. And, you guys are reasons why.
Aw. Well, I don't think we could do any better than that on wrap up. So I'm just going to say thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. As always, it was a pleasure. And I will put a link to every podcast that we have done with you in the show notes so that people can kind of go back and hear, what you have to say about all the different, changes and things that have happened over the years.
And I would like to say that although Disney may have made a little bit of a mess of the Star Wars universe, it was a fair trade-off for us to get Carrie DeYoung here at the American Kennel Club and what you've done for agility. I'd like to thank you on behalf of all of us here, certainly, and all the competitors who have benefited from your presence here over your career.
Thank you. I, again, appreciate it. It's been a great 25 years. And, I know I'll still pop up here or there.
We'll be watching for you.
All right. Thank you all so much.
And that's it for this week's podcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors, St. Rocco's Treats and hititboard.com. Check out the Teeter Teach It, only at hititboard.com. The Teeter Teach It is an easy-to-use tool that controls the amount of tip on your teeter so you can introduce motion to your dog in a gradual way. Go to hititboard.com for the new Teeter Teach It and other training tools and toys. Use discount code BDA10 to get 10% off your order. That's hititboard.com. Happy training!
Thank you for listening to Bad Dog Agility. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information, updates, and links to all our socials, just check out our website, www.baddogagility.com. If you haven't already signed up for our email subscription, we would love to have you join the BDA community. Until next time, take care.